If a doctor pulled up your chart right now, there's one number on it that could already be telling them whether you're going to live to see 90 or whether your body is quietly falling apart behind the scenes. Most people have no idea this number even matters. Most doctors won't even mention it to you unless you ask. But we look at it every single day, and when we see it, we know almost instantly which direction someone's health is heading. Today we're breaking down the real signs, the ones doctors actually look for that tell us a person is going to live a long, strong, healthy life well past 70. Not vague wellness advice, not eat your vegetables. We're talking about the actual markers on your labs, the actual things we notice in a doctor's office that separate the people who thrive in their 80s and 90s from the people who start declining hard the moment they hit retirement. And stick around, because the very last one on this list is the one that surprises almost everyone. It's not a supplement, it's not a diet, it's something most people think is a good thing. And it's actually killing them slowly. We'll get there. But first, let's start with the one hiding in plain sight on a lab report you've probably had done a dozen times and never once had explained to you properly. Before we get into it, if you want more of these breakdowns, the kind where we tell you what's actually happening in your body instead of just handing you a pamphlet, hit subscribe now, because this channel is where we say the things most doctors don't have time to say in a 15-minute appointment. Drop a comment too, we read every single one, and we want to know which of these signs surprises you the most. All right, let's start counting down. Number 6 on our list, and this one is going to make some of you go pull up your last blood test right now. HDL cholesterol. Here's the thing about cholesterol. Everybody's scared of it. Everybody thinks it's the villain. And yes, the LDL, the bad cholesterol, that's a real conversation for another day. But there is one number buried in that same panel that tells a completely different story. And it's the number almost nobody talks about, HDL, high-density lipoprotein. Think of it like a cleanup crew that drives around your bloodstream picking up the junk cholesterol before it can clog anything up. And here's what we've noticed after years of looking at charts, over and over, patient after patient. When someone in their 70s walks in with a sky-high HDL, we already know something about their family. Their parents probably lived a long time. Their grandparents probably lived a long time. This number is quietly whispering your genetic story before you've said a word. But here's the twist, and this is the part that should give you hope if your genetics aren't perfect. HDL isn't only genetic, it responds to what you do. People who walk regularly, and we're not talking about marathon training, just consistent daily movement, tend to show dramatically better HDL numbers than people who don't move at all. There's something almost magical about the way your body rewards consistent motion with this one number. So what's the target? Above 60 is where things start to look really protective. Below 40, and especially below 30, that's a flag. That tells us your body's cleanup crew is understaffed, and if that's you right now, don't panic and definitely don't feel defeated. Because here's the mistake almost everyone makes when they hear a number like that. They think it's fixed. They think genetics wrote the ending already. It didn't. Eating cleaner, cutting the processed junk, getting real movement into your day, all of that doesn't just raise the number, it improves the quality of those cleanup crews too. It's not just about how many trucks you have on the road, it's about how well those trucks are running. And that distinction right there is something most people never even hear about. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the next sign on our list has nothing to do with a blood test at all. It's something you can't measure with a needle or a lab slip, but doctors notice it the second a patient walks through the door. And ignoring it might be more dangerous than any cholesterol number you'll ever see. Number 5, purpose. This one sounds soft. It sounds like something you'd read on a motivational poster. But we are telling you, from years of sitting across from real patients, this is one of the most powerful predictors of who ages well and who doesn't. Here's the pattern we see over and over. Someone works their entire life. Maybe they don't even love the job, but it gives them structure, a reason to get up, somewhere to be. Then they retire, and for a lot of people, that's the beginning of the end. Not because their body suddenly failed, because their reason to wake up disappeared. We've watched it happen. Someone was sharp, active, engaged, and within a year or two of retiring with nothing lined up, nothing to look forward to, they start shrinking. Not physically at first, mentally, emotionally, and then the physical decline follows right behind it. Because when your mind stops reaching for something, your body stops trying to keep up. But here's the flip side, and this is the exciting part. We also see patients in their 70s, 80s, even 90s who walk in absolutely buzzing with life. They've got a trip planned, they're learning something new, they've got grandkids they're chasing around, they're part of a group, a club, a faith community, anything that pulls them forward into tomorrow. And these are, almost without exception, our healthiest patients, not because purpose is some mystical force, because purpose changes behavior. People with something to live for move more, eat better, sleep better, drink less, and manage stress differently. It's not magic, it's motivation, and motivation is medicine. So if you're sitting there right now and you don't have that spark, that's not a life sentence, that's a signal. Go find something. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be a weekly group, a hobby you dropped years ago, a sport you follow with real enthusiasm. The size of the purpose doesn't matter nearly as much as the fact that it exists. All right, now let's move into something a little more clinical, because number 4 is a test that a lot of you have actually had done and never really understood what it was telling your doctor. Number 4, the echocardiogram. This is an ultrasound of your heart. No radiation, completely painless, and honestly kind of remarkable when you think about what it can show. It looks at your heart's pumping chambers and the valves, which work like little doors opening and closing between rooms in your heart, over and over, tens of thousands of times a day, for your entire life. Now here's the part almost nobody explains properly. A normal echocardiogram doesn't automatically mean you're destined for a long life. What matters is the details buried inside that report. First, ejection fraction. This measures how efficiently your heart is actually pumping. Normal sits somewhere around 55 to 70%. Think of it as your heart's engine efficiency rating. Second, and this one's sneaky, is what years of high blood pressure can quietly do to your heart's walls. Just like muscles thicken when you lift heavy weights, your heart muscle thickens under constant pressure. Except this kind of thickening isn't a gift, it's a warning sign. It's your heart working overtime for years, and that thickening can eventually turn into serious problems if it goes unmanaged. Third, the size of your heart's upper chambers. Think of this almost like a long-term scorecard, similar to how a diabetic's average blood sugar over months gets tracked. When your heart is under chronic stress from high blood pressure, from other issues, these chambers can start to stretch and enlarge. And that stretching is often an early whisper of trouble before you'd ever feel a single symptom. And then there's something most people have never even heard of: global longitudinal strain. This is a newer, far more sensitive way of watching how the walls of your heart are actually moving, catching subtle stiffening or abnormal changes long before a traditional reading would flag anything at all. It's like catching a crack in the foundation before the whole wall starts to crumble. Here's the mistake most people make with this test. They treat it like a single photograph and move on. But a photograph only tells you what things look like today. What actually matters is the story. Comparing an echocardiogram from 5 or 10 years ago to one done today tells us far more than either one alone ever could. That's the difference between a snapshot and a trend line, and trend lines are what actually predict your future. Now, before we get to the next one, quick pause. If this kind of breakdown is actually useful to you, the kind of thing your own doctor probably doesn't have time to sit down and explain, do us a favor and hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who need to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because we've got 2 more signs coming up, and the second to last one is something almost every single person over 60 has had tested and completely ignored. All right, moving on. Number 3, protein and albumin. This one might sound boring. Trust us, it is anything but. When we pull up someone's labs, one of the very first things we scan for is their total protein and their albumin level. Why does this matter so much? Because your body needs protein for almost everything that keeps you alive and strong. Your immune system runs on it, and your heart muscle is largely built from it. Every single day, your body is either building itself up with protein or slowly breaking itself down without enough of it. Here's the scary part. When we see that protein or albumin number start drifting downward, especially in someone over 65, that is one of the strongest warning signs we can find on an entire blood panel. It usually means one of 2 things. Either the person isn't getting enough protein in their diet, or something in their body is actively breaking it down faster than they can replace it. Neither one is good news. The numbers to know. Total protein should sit at a minimum around 6.5. Albumin ideally above 3.5. When we start seeing people down in the low 3s, high 2s, that's when alarm bells go off. Because by the time that number has dropped that far, the person is usually already losing muscle, already weakening, and often already dealing with an underlying illness that's quietly draining their body's reserves. This connects directly to something called sarcopenia, which is just a clinical term for muscle wasting. And here's what most people don't realize. Sarcopenia doesn't just make you weaker, it makes you fragile. It's tied to falls, to hospital stays, to a slower recovery from literally everything, from surgery to the flu. We see this constantly in patients who've had a long hospital stay, their protein levels crash, and getting them back to strength afterward becomes a real uphill battle. There's even a specific condition tied to this in heart patients, where the ongoing stress of heart disease itself causes the body to burn through muscle and protein reserves faster than normal, even if the person is eating relatively well. It's the body cannibalizing itself just to keep functioning. So here's the takeaway that matters. This is one of the very few numbers on a lab report that you can actually do something about starting today. Getting enough quality protein in your diet, especially as you get older, isn't optional. It's foundational. It's one of the strongest, most researched markers of long-term survival that exists, and almost nobody talks about it. Now here's where it gets personal, because the next sign on our list is something every single one of you can control today, this afternoon, right now, without spending a single dollar. Number 2, walking. When a patient in their 70s tells us they walk regularly, long walks, hiking, errands on foot, whatever it looks like, we hear that and we think this person is set up beautifully. Walking might genuinely be the most underrated superpower in all of medicine. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are failing at this without even realizing it. Studies show the average person is sitting for 10 to 12 hours a day. 10 to 12 hours. Screens have made it dramatically worse. A huge portion of adults are getting under 4,000 steps a day when the healthy target sits closer to 10,000 or more. Here's why this matters so much more than people think. The moment your body stops moving regularly, it starts sending a signal that it doesn't need to maintain itself. Muscles atrophy. Insulin resistance creeps in. Bone density starts to drop. And this isn't a slow, gentle decline. It can spiral fast because weakness leads to less movement, and less movement leads to more weakness. It's a downward loop that gets harder to escape the longer it continues. But flip it around, and the same loop works in your favor. Walking builds bone density. It strengthens your core. It keeps your balance sharp. And balance matters more than most people realize because falls, especially hip fractures in older adults, can actually be more dangerous statistically than a major heart attack. Nobody warns you about that until it's too late. Here's something we've noticed after years of watching patients age, and it's almost eerie how consistent it is. Somewhere around the early 80s, people seem to split into 2 completely different paths. Those who kept walking, kept moving, kept their protein and hydration dialed in, they keep doing remarkably well. But those who let movement slip away around that age, we start to see a much steeper decline. We've tracked patients for decades and watched this pattern repeat itself again and again. And there's something fascinating buried in longevity research from around the world. In some of the regions where people live the longest, researchers have noticed the terrain itself is often steep, hilly, uphill. People walking to a village center, to a church, to a market every single day on an incline. That daily uphill effort, built quietly into ordinary life without anyone calling it exercise, might be one of the hidden ingredients behind some of the longest living populations on Earth. So if you take nothing else from this video, take this. Walk. Walk more than you think you need to. It costs nothing, and it might be doing more for your long-term survival than anything sitting in your medicine cabinet. And that brings us to number 1. The sign doctors say without hesitation is the single strongest predictor of all. And this one's going to surprise you because it's not about adding something to your life. It's about how little you need. Fewer medications. Here's a pattern that shows up so consistently it almost feels like a rule. When a patient walks in at 95, 98 years old, sharp, strong, still living independently, and we pull up their chart, they are almost always on just 2, 3, maybe 4 medications, sometimes none at all, just a few natural supplements here and there. And every single time we see it, we're not surprised anymore. It's practically a signature. Now here's the critical thing to understand, because this isn't about people stubbornly refusing medication when they need it. It's the opposite. These are people who, through diet, through movement, through consistent daily habits, simply never developed the underlying problems that would have required medication in the first place. They got their blood pressure down naturally, they kept their blood sugar in check. Their bodies never needed the intervention because they took care of the root cause long before it became a crisis. Compare that to what we see all too often in hospitals, patients coming in from nursing homes on 20, even 30 different pills. And here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. So often, one medication gets prescribed to manage a side effect from another medication, which then causes its own side effect, which then gets treated with yet another medication. It's a cascade, a prescribing spiral that can genuinely be harder to escape than the original problem ever was. There's a real belief among doctors who've been doing this a long time that you could safely de-escalate roughly half of all medications prescribed to people over 65, under proper medical supervision, of course, and many of those patients would actually be healthier for it. That's not a small claim. That's a massive statement about how far the pendulum has swung. To be absolutely clear, this is not permission to stop taking something your doctor prescribed. Some conditions genuinely require medication, and stopping cold turkey can be dangerous, but the broader lesson stands. The fewer medications someone needs by the time they reach their 70s, generally speaking, the stronger the foundation they built underneath themselves for decades before that point. So there you have it. 6 signs buried in labs, in habits, in mindset that quietly separate the people who thrive well into their 80s and 90s from the people who start declining the moment life gets a little easier. And here's the honest truth before we wrap up. You don't need to check every single box on this list to be on the right path. Maybe your HDL isn't where you'd like it. Maybe your last echocardiogram showed something worth watching. That doesn't mean the door is closed. Every single day, every single choice still tilts the odds a little further in your favor or a little further away from it. Life is unpredictable. We've all seen people who did everything right and still faced something unfair. Nobody can promise you a guaranteed outcome, but you can absolutely stack the odds in your favor, one walk, one meal, one decision at a time. If this video gave you something worth thinking about, something worth mentioning to your own doctor at your next visit, do us a favor. Hit subscribe, because we're going to keep breaking down exactly what's happening inside your body in plain, honest language, without the fluff and without the fear-mongering. Drop a comment and tell us which of these 6 signs hit closest to home for you, and if you know someone in their 60s or 70s who needs to hear this, someone you love, someone you're rooting for, send this their way. This isn't just information. For some of you, it might genuinely change how many years you get and how good those years feel. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next one.